Hello, BookTube, and I thought I'd come to you with a tag. I saw this on James Holder's channel. It is, "What is your poetry?" tag. And I made a joke in the comment of his saying that, well, if in the questions Bukowski wasn't mentioned, I might do this. Yeah, don't like Bukowski. Anyway, let's do it anyway. It was created by Matt Wall, Paperback Junky, and as I say, I just saw it earlier this evening on James Holder's channel, and I will put the links down below. And there are 8 questions, and the first question is, do you prefer metaphor or simile? Probably metaphor more than simile. But I do like both. But I would say probably metaphor a little better. Number 2, what is the most important element in a poem for you? Form / structure, meaning / feeling, sound / alliteration, assonance, consonance, etc. Well, depends on the poet, really, but I like all those things depending on the poem as well. But I suppose the meaning and the feeling. And I do like the sound at times of the words just in themselves, and they don't have to have a lot of meaning. And that's where you get the alliteration, assonance, consonants, like rhyming, and so forth. It depends on the poet and the poem. But I suppose in general it would be meaning, feeling, and sound. Number 3, what is your favorite school or / movement in poetry? Well, I will say easily the one that I do not like whatsoever is the beats. But I suppose my favorites would be pastoralism and romanticism. Pastoralism, John Clare, while he was also romanticism as well, but a lot of pastoralism there. And for romanticism, well, you've got, Shelley, Byron, Keats, Coleridge, on and on and on. And there's other ones, like more modern ones. I do like. I never get her name correctly. 20s, Saint Vincent Millay, Edna Saint Vincent Millay. That's it. Yeah. And Robert Frost, I do like. So there are other ones, and there's a few that are approaching sort of this time as we are now that aren't too bad occasionally. Number 4, since we see the world through a poet's eyes, does a poet have to live an interesting life for you to like their poetry? It doesn't have to, but it does, or it can lead to interesting poems. Or bad poems. It's all individual. It's hard to make a hard and fast rule, at least for me. But somebody like John Clare, I love, and he wouldn't have been able to write his poetry if he didn't live in the area that he did, and had the life that he did. So yeah, and that's ties in with the next one, 5. How does geography play into the poets you like, or does it at all? John Clare, definitely. It's where he was from, and outside of Peterborough, in I think it was, I forget what county it was in. It's now in Cambridgeshire, I think, but Helpston. It was in a different county when he was alive. And yeah, and I think the others, like I say, Coleridge and Keats and Wordsworth, where they live infuses their poetry. So it definitely does. Number 6, Whitman said, to have great poets, there must be great audiences. Bukowski said, to have great audiences, you need great poets. Well, we'll forget about what he says. Doesn't even matter if it makes sense. And then I said, unless you have great places for those two to meet, it doesn't matter. What's your take? I don't really have a take on any of those. I just think, like, if it's going to be a great poet, it's going to be if poetry, and it doesn't necessarily need to chime and rhyme with the times. I didn't mean to do that, but but it doesn't need to work for the times. It can work later as being great poetry. So it's none of those things, and I don't think you need an audience to getting together with the poet to be a great poet. Not at all, or a great audience. You do need a poet does need an audience, but it's not in this sense. Like it doesn't make a great poet to have a great audience. Not at all. Number 7. Who do you think has advanced poetry the most? It's an impossible question, I think, to answer. I think the Romantics did a lot for poetry. I guess as a group, not who, but I guess the Romantics probably pushed poetry in a new direction. Rather than sort of purely classical illusions and things like that. So, yeah. So, Romantics. Number 8. Since the rise of the moderns and freeform verse over the last 50 years, and more currently the rise of insta poetry. Yeah. What movements of poetry do you think the future holds? No idea whatsoever. If it's something like insta poetry and other things like this, it's going to be bad. So, anyway. So that was an interesting, because I do like poetry and I write poetry myself. Or I did. I haven't written much in the past couple of years since COVID sort of took over. Very little. Anyway, that was an interesting, as I say, interesting set of questions. It made me think about things because I never really thought of schools of poetry of what I'd like as specific schools, and then I sort of realized the poets I like. Oh yeah, they fit into those. So that's quite interesting. Anyway, I'll see you next time, BookTube. Take care.